Hi, nice to have you here. My name's Amanda Ambles, and I live in a small market town, but a very spiritual place called Glastonbury, and that's in Somerset in the UK. And I do videos on things that are on my mind, in my heart, things to get off my chest. And one of the big things that I've been thinking about recently is trust, and also, the life of being an empath as well. So, trust in regard to being an empath and why empaths actually do stop trusting eventually. So, if you stop trusting people, you're not alone. You're not cold, but when your nervous system can no longer take it, when we don't feel safe with certain people because of the way their energy is, perhaps the way they react to us, then, trust is eroded slowly over time. You don't necessarily fear people anymore, but what it is you become more wary. And what I've noticed with empaths, we're very open-hearted. We like to accept people and we like to see the best in people and invite them into our lives quite readily. And that's not always the best approach from my experience. And very often they end up in narcissistic relationships, and the role that they're playing is emotional caretaker. And also, in friendships, you end up becoming a bit like the therapist who has to listen to all the icky, dark things, unresolved traumas, all of this. So basically, you end up preferring to be alone because you feel safer. It's drama free, isn't it? Being alone. And basically, all of these broken promises, they wear you down at the end of the day. And we end up distancing ourselves a bit, you know. I mean, it's not to say that we don't like the company of others, but we need to receive emotional consistency. And then our anxiety and those feelings in our nervous systems, they're not triggered. So what I would say that often what happens is that we have overflowing kindness quite often. Our hearts are very open. Maybe our chakras are open too. I'm not too sure. But basically what happens is our kindness is taken as permission. So for instance, what happens is somebody who, I might just meet online or whatever, they feel that they have the right to my friendship without really knowing me and without me really knowing them. And it's a shame that a lot of these people, they come along and there's a lack of respect. So kindness, instead of being reciprocated, is actually consumed and devoured, actually. And there is not the effort coming back. It's not a two-way energy exchange. So as some of you who may have followed my channel last year, I suffered a great deal at the hands of people that I really trusted. I went away with them over the Christmas period, a time when emotions are quite heightened anyway. And basically, the long and short of it was that my trust was very badly abused. And, this resulted in trolling, poison letters, and all kinds of things sort of happened, after that. And then there ended up being this kind of ringleader who kind of like, pulled a lot of my friends, so-called friends, away from me. But I believe that true friendship would withstand things like that, would withstand people kind of abusing that friendship and kind of turning against you. So a lot of us empaths, we end up becoming loners, or as it is in the tarot, it's a little bit like the hermit card. So withdrawing, perhaps it's also winter too. So I do know a friend who's an empath who literally he's completely cut off from being online. And I can totally get that and understand that. And he very rarely goes on the high street here, which can be quite high drama too. And I too recently have just pulled away from Facebook because if you think about it, it's almost like being at a party with about 1,000. If you've got 1,000 friends, it's like 1,000 people all talking at once. I think I only had about 300, but that was still, you know, a lot. And that was a lot of different energies bouncing around here, there, and everywhere. And although it sort of felt quite exciting and, you know, it probably got the serotonin going or whatever it is, you know, I feel a bit calmer. My nervous system feels calmer for pulling away from that. So what happens is that we became kind of withdrawn by necessity often. And we like to make peace. Often in families, we end up being the peacemakers. We're the emotional, intelligent and skilled ones in the family. So we attract friendships that aren't always for our benefit. So we have to learn discernment and boundaries and clarity. And that is really our challenge. So often the dynamics that happen is we are the soother. We're the ones absorbing everything and carrying the load for others. And this can be really wearing. It can be really exhausting. I made a short recently about being an empath in Glastonbury, and it was a little bit deadpan and a little bit kind of tongue-in-cheek. But, you know, I think it made a lot of people, especially those who live in Glastonbury, sort of like it made them laugh, actually, because they could relate to it. So, so what we see as love is not always love. Maybe it's a pattern that we get sort of pulled into. We're looking for acceptance. We're looking for that love, but it isn't always that. And attachment is not necessarily love. Just because we feel we have a lack of something doesn't mean to say that it's love. So we have to be very careful. And the reason why we've withdrawn is there's evidence, there's repetition, there's patterns. So when people are disinterested in our pain or our anxiety, then we realize that it isn't a two-way street. And then we have to start becoming selective and having some standards. It becomes less about when you're in your teens and you want loads of friends. And I think you naturally do kind of go that way anyway when you become older, because you become a bit more sovereign, a bit more self-sufficient. And you don't necessarily have to isolate yourself. I don't completely. But also we have to watch over giving and also staying out of chaotic situations or energies. And very often our energy, what happens is people can respond quite aggressively. I mean, when I first moved back to Glastonbury, it was quite ironic. They call it the Isle of Glass, which is also like, you know, it reflects back to you where you're at. And quite often other people behave quite aggressively towards us. And it's almost like that sensitivity, that softness can kind of draw that to you. So when I moved back a few years ago, and I did live here previously for 7 years, the person who I had fallen out with, which was one of my closest friends for 7 years, is literally directly facing me with her husband on the street that I'm living on. So it's almost like saying, you know, you've got to sort this out. But it's almost as though we kind of coexist opposite facing each other. We're neighbours, but we don't really communicate with each other. But I know in my heart of hearts that after those 7 years and she turned, that I held out the olive branch. So I don't feel bad. So what we have to ask ourselves is not, do I like this person or do I dislike this person? It's that gut reaction that you get from somebody. And people can be very good at masking their intentions and masking their personality. But what you do need to ask is, do I feel safe around this person? How is my nervous system? How is my gut reacting to this? You know, they say in the East that, you know, the gut is the gut mind, the stomach mind, isn't it? And so much of what we feel is there. So we don't need to be entertained by people to feel safe. And also, we often give people instant access and we trust too quickly. I, for one, am very, very guilty of that. Our heart is not a public space, although, you know, it's good to have an open heart, but not too open. And what I am learning is that trust has to be earned. It doesn't matter how long you know somebody, but actually trust and closeness has to be earned. And like my dear friend Pixie Boy said, you're very lucky if you've got 5 true friends that you can count them on one hand. And I realise that those words really resonate with me now. So in order to earn that trust, there needs to be energy, effort, consistency, and no more disrespecting you. And if somebody does disrespect you, sends you a nasty message, text message, just block them. Don't give them access to you. And boundaries are your clarity. So you most probably had a good reason to stop trusting everybody. And you need to go along with that. But what is needed is clarity, boundaries, and trusting ourselves. Trust yourself. You will know, you have that really sharpened sense of intuition, and your senses sharpen, because if you're an empath, you're very likely to also be a highly sensitive person. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So let's stop abandoning our own needs for others and reclaim ourselves, reclaim our sovereignty, reclaim who we are, and stand firm in that. Be clear of our boundaries. Okay, I hope that's helped. And it isn't to say that we must, just completely isolate ourselves, but just to be wary of who we let in. Okay, so I'm Amanda Ambles, and I'm normally ambling, but I'm in my lovely cosy bedroom this morning. Me and Aurora haven't been out for a walk just yet. And I'm donning my hat, and it's the Mongolian millionaire look that I'm channeling. All right, you take care. Lovely to have you here. Be lovely if you could leave a comment, maybe from where you're listening, if any of this resonated with you, and maybe where you are. And also like, share, subscribe. That would be amazing. Thank you for being here. Take care.